coffee, there's two ingredients. There's water, which we talk about in another video. You got to worry about it being filtered and hot. And the other part is coffee itself. But to get it into a dissolvable state, you got to grind it. The main goal with grinding coffee so it dissolves evenly is an even grind. If things are different sizes, they're going to dissolve at different rates. If you have, for instance, let's use sugar as an example. If you have fine sugar with coarse sugar and you put them both in a cup, they're not going to dissolve at the same rate. If it's sugar, that's not as big of a deal. But with coffee, that means that not every portion, every grind is doing its job. So there's a tendency when it comes to brewing, if it's not a consistent grind, it's going to under-extract or extract unevenly, and that's not going to taste like the same as it does over at the cafe. So if it's not a consistent grind, that means that some of them aren't going to extract properly, and that means that the cup's not going to taste consistent, and it could taste sour or over-extracted, and ultimately it's just not going to taste like it does at the coffee shop, which is still our goal. If you have a blade grinder, which is something that people usually get to be able to enter into grinding coffee at home, I usually recommend against that because it's not consistent. It's just two blades. It's a little mini blender. I consider them two tiny ninjas just going at the beans and chopping them up willy-nilly. And so you have some stuff that's going to be really, really big, some stuff that's itty bitty. And that means that they're going to dissolve at different rates, meaning the coffee's not going to be consistent, it's not going to be a clean cup, and it's not what I would recommend. If you have to choose between a blade grinder or having it ground at the cafe, even though we've talked about freshness in another video, I would say have it ground at the cafe because it's going to make that much of a difference. There's a much harder job ahead of you if you use a blade grinder. So the burr grinder that we recommend is, of course, the one that we have on our website. It's the Ode Burr Grinder. The idea of a burr grinder, which I like because it sounds like a bear grinder, but it's a burr grinder, are two plates that are a certain distance away from each other, and the coffee goes between these plates and it grinds it. A blade grinder is simply what it sounds like, a little blender, but a burr grinder are two plates, two gears rubbing against each other. Flat burrs look like this, and conical burrs are exactly what you think. They're a cone within a slightly larger opening for the cone. And those grinders are the ones that professionals use at the cafe to be able to make sure that the grinds are consistent and they're of the right grind size for the type of brew method that you are using. So the Ode Brew Grinder that I have right here is really meant for filtered coffee. It's not going to grind as fine as what you need for espresso. Espresso requires a lot finer grind, and there's some amazing grinders out there for both home and prosumer use that's awesome. So when you're grinding your coffee, you have to think about what you're grinding it for. Is it a French press, an AeroPress, espresso? Is it a pour over? All of those things require slightly different grind sizes. The grinder that I have in front of me is more for filtered coffee. This doesn't produce coffee fine enough for what you would probably need to be able to do espresso. Espresso is coffee under immense amounts of pressure, so it's able to brew properly by being really, really compact and really fine. But this grinder is really consistent, really quiet to be able to produce stuff that's ideal for something like a French press or a pour over. And if you have a grind that's really consistent, those brew methods are going to be behaving a lot more predictably, and your coffee is going to taste a lot more like it does at the cafe.